All right, today we're going full-on medical detective. We're about to crack the case on a super stealthy illness and unravel the complex treatments needed to actually fight it.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if an illness was literally designed to hide from your doctor? That's the real challenge we're up against. Some of these infections are just masters of disguise, and it makes them incredibly tough to spot and even harder to treat. Today, we're focusing on one of the most elusive culprits of them all.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to identify our suspect. Then we'll check out two really powerful tools in the treatment toolkit, figure out how to choose the right one, and then we'll call in some essential backup. And finally, we'll deliver the doctor's final verdict.
Okay, let's dive right in. Our investigation starts now, and we're beginning by profiling our main target, this stealthy invader that's responsible for a whole mess of persistent and, well, really confusing symptoms. So, let's meet our culprit, Bartonella. Now, the two words you really need to lock in on here are stealthy and persistent. This is not your average run-of-the-mill bacterial infection. No, this thing is an expert at hiding inside the body, which is exactly why it's so darn tricky for doctors to pin down.
Here's the rap sheet. It gets around through common things like ticks and fleas, and you've probably heard of its most famous alias, cat scratch disease. But what really makes it a formidable foe is just how persistent it is. Plus, it often shows up with friends like Lyme disease, which just creates this incredibly complex case for any doctor to solve.
Okay, so we know who we're dealing with. Now, let's open up the specialist's toolkit and look at the advanced tools that medical detectives turn to when the standard antibiotics just aren't getting the job done.
Our first tool is something called dapsone. Now, you should think of this as a highly specialized instrument, almost like a scalpel. It's not the first thing a doctor reaches for, but in very specific situations, it's an incredibly powerful option because of its unique combo of effects.
So, how does this thing actually work? Well, it's got this cool two-pronged attack. First, it helps calm down inflammation by basically telling certain overactive immune cells, they're called neutrophils, to just take a breath and stand down. And second, it has direct microbe fighting powers. So it's kind of like a peacekeeper and a warrior all in one.
All right, our next tool is methylene blue. Now, if dapsone is that specialized scalpel, think of this one as a key that unlocks a very, very specific and well-guarded door, the brain.
You see, its ability to cross the super protective blood-brain barrier is a total game changer. This means it can get right in there and directly help brain cells produce energy. That makes it invaluable for patients who are struggling with those awful neurological issues, the kind of symptoms that, let's be honest, often get dismissed or misunderstood. It's especially useful if there's a co-infection like the parasite Babesia, or for anyone whose cells are just struggling to produce energy, which is called mitochondrial dysfunction.
So, we've got our two advanced tools. Now for what is maybe the most critical part of this whole investigation. How does a doctor actually decide which one to use? Well, it all comes down to the evidence. In this case, the patient's specific symptoms. So let's say the main clues are things like brain fog and fatigue. Methylene blue is often the go-to choice to go straight to the source, the brain. Dapsone, on the other hand, might be chosen when the case is a bit more complex, and maybe it involves the immune system in other ways, like with certain autoimmune skin conditions.
This table really breaks it down nicely. If the dominant clues are neurologic, we're talking severe brain fog, memory problems, that deep, unshakable fatigue, methylene blue is probably the better candidate. But if the evidence points more towards autoimmune issues or those high neutrophil levels we talked about earlier, then the investigation starts leaning toward dapsone. The big takeaway here is that the patient's unique symptoms are what guide the entire treatment strategy.
You know, any good detective will tell you they never work alone. So far, we've been all about offense, attacking the bacteria. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about defense. Because tackling a persistent infection isn't just about attacking. It's also about building up your body's own protective forces. So let's meet the support crew. Leading this incredible team is glutathione. You'll often hear this called the body's master antioxidant, and honestly, for good reason. It is absolutely fundamental for detoxification and for keeping your immune system balanced while it's in a really tough fight.
It's especially helpful for things like fatigue and those neurological symptoms. But, and this is a big but, it's not for everybody. People who are sensitive to sulfur need to be really cautious. And the form you take it in matters too. Things like liposomal or IV forms tend to be much more easily absorbed by the body.
All right, next up in our support crew is NAC. Think of this one as the versatile multi-tool in our kit. It plays a dual role. It helps protect the body, and it can also help weaken the enemy's own defenses.
Now here's the really fascinating part. NAC is what's called a precursor to glutathione. That means it gives your body the raw materials it needs to make more of that master antioxidant we just talked about. And on top of that, it has this amazing ability to help break down something called biofilms, which are basically these slimy protective shields that bacteria build to hide from your immune system. Pretty cool, right?
And finally, we have a classic, reliable member of the team, vitamin C. It might be something you've known about forever, but its role in supporting the body during a chronic illness is absolutely vital.
You see, vitamin C is the ultimate team player. It directly supports the immune system, it helps with detoxification, and, this part is key, it actually helps recycle other antioxidants, like glutathione, which makes the entire support crew work that much more effectively.
So we've looked at the suspect, we've examined the tools, we've met the support crew. So what's the final takeaway from this entire investigation? What's the verdict on how to actually get a successful outcome?
This quote from the source material really just hits the nail on the head. Lab tests, the hard data, they are an essential piece of the puzzle. Of course they are. They give us clues, they help us track progress, but they don't reveal the full picture all on their own.
And that right there brings us to our final verdict. The most effective treatment isn't just about one test or one magic pill. It's about having a skilled medical detective, a doctor with deep clinical knowledge who can combine all that lab data with the patient's unique story to put together a truly personalized strategy.
So, we'll just leave you with this one question to think about. When you're dealing with complex, stealthy illnesses like Bartonella, it is so critical to ask, is the approach you're taking just looking at one piece of the evidence, or is it truly seeing the whole picture? Thanks for digging into this with me today.